Okay, look at this chart for a second. The yellow part on the left, that is the richest people in the country, the richest quintile. The orange is the second richest, the red is the middle, and so on. The poorest group of people in the country is the gray there on the right. If you ask Americans, what this graph means is if you ask Americans, how would you like the wealth in this country to be distributed? Ideally, what would be best? This is what Americans say they would like it to be like in this country. So as you can see, Americans say, even ideally, we get that the richest people in the country are going to control more money than the poorest people in the country. That's our system. That's capitalism. So yellow, the richest, get a bigger share of the pie than the poorest people, the little gray section. This is what Americans say they would like our country to be like. That said, we realize that the rich really have gotten richer. And so when you ask Americans instead, not what do you want things to be like, but what income in this country really is like, this is what we tell pollsters we really think it actually is. This is what we think it is. Here's what it really is in real life. Yeah. We are totally incorrect in terms of how unequal we think we are as a society. We are way more unequal than we think we are. And what we say we want to be is radically more equal than we are, and radically more equal than what we have deluded ourselves into thinking that we are, but in fact we are not. Mother Jones published this graph together like this last year. It's based on a giant survey by a Harvard business professor and a behavioral economist. I have kept this graph in my bookmarks on my computer ever since. I think this is amazing and really important. It may also be key to fixing one of the scariest things written about the future of our country in a very long time. The great Chris Hayes, who you know from this network, has a new book out that's called Twilight of the Elites, America After Meritocracy. And in this new book, Chris makes the case that the people who are supposed to be good at stuff in our country are no longer good at stuff. We're sort of calcified in a way in this country that we count on an elite to do everything. But for a very important reason, our elite sucks. And it's kind of hard to argue with him on that. I mean, what elite institution is in good shape in our country if you judge by our recent history? If you judge, for example, by the first decade of this century, what Chris calls the decade of fail, well, it starts with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, an institution that embodies an ideal of pure, dispassionate, elite cogitation, handed the presidency to a favored choice of a slim 5-person majority in a ruling whose legal logic was so tortured, the court itself announced it could not be used as precedent. Then, the American security apparatus, the largest in the world, failed to prevent 19 men with knives and box cutters from pulling off the greatest mass murder in U.S. history. Just a few months later, Enron and Arthur Andersen imploded. At the time, Enron was the largest corporate bankruptcy in the history of the nation. What once was the hottest company in America was revealed to be an elaborate fraud, aided and abetted by one of the most trusted accounting firms in the entire world. So that's how we started. And then there was the Iraq War. And then there was Katrina and the drowning of New Orleans. And then there was the collapse of Wall Street and the collapse of housing and the onset of the greatest depression since the Great Depression. Quoting Chris, the dysfunction revealed by the crisis decade extends even past the government and the Fortune 500. The Catholic Church was exposed for its systematic policy of protecting serial child rapists and enabling them to victimize children. Penn State University was forced to fire its beloved football coach and the university president after it was revealed that much of the school's sports and administrative hierarchy had looked the other way, while former assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky allegedly raped and abused young boys on its own property. Even baseball, our own national pastime, came to be viewed as little more than a corrupt racket, as each week brought a new revelation of a star who was taking performance-enhancing drugs, while owners, players, and union leadership colluded in a cover-up. Quote, I'm 31, an Iraq War veteran, a Penn State graduate, a Catholic, a native of State College, an acquaintance of Sandusky's, and a product of the Second Mile Foundation, wrote Thomas Day, days after the Penn State scandal broke. And I have fully lost faith in the leadership of my parents' generation. Yeah, right? Institutional collapse. Good reason to have faith in nothing we are supposed to have faith in. The failure of everything run by the elites in our country. The novel and arresting thesis we are getting now from Chris Hayes in this really important book is that we need better elites, which means there has to be some room for there to be new ones, which is why this is a reason to be cheerful, actually. Yeah, we have a spectacularly unequal society, We have a spectacularly calcified elite, but Americans don't want that. Americans don't want what we've got now. And if we can figure out a way to get the America that we say we do want, Chris says that is how we will free ourselves from all our elite institutions being such epic, catastrophic failures. Interesting, right? Joining us now for the interview, my friend and colleague Chris Hayes, the host of Up with Chris Hayes, weekends on MSNBC, and the author of the brand new blockbuster, Twilight of the Elites. Chris, it is great to see you. Congratulations, man. You did it.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see you healthy and happy and in the anchor chair again.
Well, first, let me, as I start with all of with guests in situations like this, tell me what I got wrong about your thesis, or at least tell me if I got it right, that wanting more equality in the United States is maybe a solution to us sucking so badly at everything we're supposed to be good at.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you showed that Dan Ariely data, because I think we do have a sense, and you hear this on the left a lot, America is unequal because Americans like it that way, because Americans buy into this idea that it should be this way, that the job creators are owed deference. And I think that data is really interesting because it shows we actually have more egalitarian impulses than we give ourselves credit for. That actually we underestimate just how unequal the society is, and we want it to be even more equal. And if my analysis is right, and I'm partial to think it is, I think that is the way out, because ultimately what we're seeing in the failed decade, what we're seeing over the last 10 years, I think, is the inevitable crises that extreme inequality of the kind that we have had produces. And the reason it produces it, and this is, I think, really important, is that it produces a society in which the elites have this social distance from the people whose decisions the people who experience the effects of their decisions. And that is a recipe for catastrophe. And there's all sorts of examples of how that's played out.
So you have to have an elite that has to earn it, essentially. You need to get back to meritocracy. You need to be in charge of something because you have proven an ability to be good at being in charge of that thing. And in order for that to be true, there has to be more competition to get into the elite?
So we have a system of tremendous competition now, and part of the problem is, I think, some of the pathologies that we have amongst our elites, the Jamie Dimons of the world are a perfect example, is born by this ceaseless competition. But we have a terrible combination of, it's kind of like the bailouts, right? The bailouts were the worst parts of socialism and the worst part of capitalism. Our current elite, we have the worst part of this kind of ceaseless competition, but then we actually don't have a lot of accountability at the top. I mean, think about the fact that we have seen more baseball players before juries for lying about steroid use than we have seen major bankers before juries for the largest destruction of wealth in the history of the country, right? We have a country that is incredibly, incredibly punitive at the bottom. We put more people in prison than any other industrialized democracy, almost in any other country. We have a labor system in which you can be fired because you give your boss the wrong look or you call him dude. And yet at the top, we see almost no accountability. We see the same people that sold the Iraq War are still dining out on that. We see the same people that brought down Wall Street are still either have jobs or left with golden parachutes. And so that inequality of accountability produces really perverse incentives for the decision makers up at the top. How
do you see us getting toward an accountability that makes the elite a better elite?
A huge part of it, I think, is making the society more equal. And it gets back to the chart you showed in the beginning. We can't have a society in which the people at the top are so removed from the experience of ordinary life. And there's all kinds of ways you can think about shrinking it. One of the pernicious effects of this you see play out, and you basically wrote a book about this entire thing and identified this quite well, which is, think about the wars that we fought for 10 years, the longest period of war in the Republic's history. I mean, the number of veterans in Congress, right, is at historic lows. We have the people at the top of the income strata and the educational strata are increasingly alienated and removed from the folks that are asked to fight the war, bear the burden with record amounts of tours, etc. And that is one of the things that facilitates the length of the duration of these engagements. And so what we have to do is figure out ways, come up with ways to shrink that social distance, to embed our elites in the same system that everybody else is in.
So people feel the pain that they're inflicting with bad ideas. in their own lives and in their own families' lives. Yeah, Chris Hayes is the author of Twilight of the Elites, the host of your must-watch weekend viewing, Up with Chris Hayes, weekends from 8 to 10 Eastern right here on MSNBC. And Chris, when you asked me to read the book when it was still in galleys, I said that this is the next big thing that we have been waiting for. And I really think that. I think that this is this is the concept that we need to be debating right now in terms of talking about big picture structural stuff about the country and the direction that we're going. I think this is a huge achievement. I'm really impressed. Congratulations, man.
That means a lot, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right.
The Rachel Maddow Show, weeknights at 9 Eastern on MSNBC.